The Void, Series 1, Episode 1, The Naled, Chapter 14. "Looks like we've been found out," Voight commented. Major Varma had it right. Their movement to return back to the landing site had triggered a response. "Who's not back yet?" she inquired. "Heinze, Sheen, Dawkins, and Mayhew," Varma responded. "No point being subtle now," Voight indicated. "Singh, get the must warmed up." "All units, hoof it!" Varma bawled into the quoncom. "Hoofing it, sir," came the response. Voight moved to the window overlooking the airstrip. She could see the must lighting up in preparation. Out of the corner of her eye, she detected movement. From behind a building, two Naleds suddenly emerged, galloping towards the must with astonishing pace. "Singh, Archer, incoming!" she yelled into the quoncom. Before she even finished the statement, the Naled were upon the transport. One crawled upon the top of the vehicle and mangled the gun emplacement, damaging it just enough to render it inoperable. Achieving this purpose, it clambered back down and took up a position by the craft. "Where the did they come from?" she bellowed. Kane, Varma, and Hannah all joined her at the window, along with the returned soldiers. "They took out the gun," Varma observed. "They're not attacking either," Hannah exclaimed, noting how they had taken up positions by the craft, but not actively moving against it now the guns were gone. "They're just to stop us leaving," Varma explained. "They want to keep us here." "I guess that resolves the question of their intelligence." "Void to Liberator. Hostiles have attacked the must. Vehicle damaged but still flight capable, but we can't get to it without engaging the hostiles. Remaining teams still inbound, still assessing the situation but may require support. We'll keep you updated." "Acknowledged. Revenant's currently being prepped and will be with you shortly." "Major, Mayhew, we've got some big bugs on our eye." "How far?" "A few seconds out." Varma bolted for the stairwell, jumping down the stairs. "Everyone downstairs, we may have to fight our way out," Voight ordered. Complying, everyone made a move for the stairwell, Kane ensuring everyone was ahead of himself. Upon reaching the ground floor, they found Heinze and Sheen had just arrived, and Varma had barged his way through the door on the opposite side of the airstrip, on his way to support the incoming soldiers. "You two, support the Major. The others with me," Voight commanded. Messier and Goldblatt raced after Varma, whilst Voight made her way to the door facing the airstrip. As she opened the door, she could see more Naled pouring onto the airfield. Their path to the ship was now blocked, and by vast numbers. Voight swore. "Back inside." She made her way to the door Varma exited and opened it. She could see Varma at the end of the street, opening fire with his railgun, quickly joined by Messier and Goldblatt. Mayhew and Dawkins came into view, and the group started making their way back to the control center. Mayhew was injured and struggling to keep up as more Naled emerged from the street. They were closing in on Mayhew, but the Major turned and headed back toward him, relinquishing his railgun and unsheathing his Kanda. As one Naled grabbed Mayhew, Varma leaped in with his Kanda raised, striking down and severing the limb, freeing Mayhew. Another stroke saw him Another bore down on him and he swung again. The second Naled saw the threat and recoiled, barely avoiding the blade. It lashed out with one of its legs, but Varma noticed it and reacted quickly enough to sever that limb as well. Mayhew now had momentum, and he was nearly at the control center. Seeing this, Varma started running back, sprinting like a man possessed. Naled in close pursuit. The soldiers were blasting away with their railguns, laying down suppressing fire, taking out anything that got too close to the Major. "Inside!" Varma yelled. Everyone complied, holding the door until Varma came flying in, then slamming it shut. Surprisingly, the Naled did not slam into the door behind him. Voight looked out carefully. The Naled had stopped several meters away. "They've stopped," Voight explained. "Where are they that side?" "They're a few meters away from the building," Heinze summarized. Mayhew grabbed the winded Varma and kissed him on the forehead. "Major, I love you," he expressed gratefully. "I still have my Kanda," Varma warned through heavy breaths. "Void to Liberator. We're surrounded by hostiles, possibly thousands of them. Where's those revenants?" "They're in flight and on their way." "Is everyone all right?" Varma asked. "One of them slashed at Mayhew, but I don't think it's too bad." "You're in quarantine when we get back," Varma decided. "What are they doing?" Voight asked. "They're waiting for something," Hannah responded quietly. "Can you sense them now?" "Only vaguely. It's still the same jumble, but with so many in close proximity, I can pick up on a few things. Like what? Like the hate. They hate us with a ferocity that's hard not to pick up on. Fantastic, Voight moaned. Still, if they hate us so much, why have they stopped? Humans. The voice came from outside, and it caused the group to suddenly freeze. It was a rasping, wheezing voice that sounded like it came straight from the tomb. It was plain that the voice didn't belong to any creed of human. Tell me that wasn't them, Heinze panicked. They can speak Caladian, Mayhew added, referring to the predominant language of the Republic. It appears so, Voight responded. Humans, come and speak. If they hate us so much, why aren't they attacking? Voight questioned rhetorically. Why do they want to speak? They want intelligence, simple as that, Varma reasoned. We shouldn't expect any mercy afterwards, though. We have to speak to them. If we don't, they will probably attack and kill us, Voight judged. They may do anyway, but if we can buy some time, the Revenants might get here before they decide not to wait any longer. I will go, Kane volunteered. I'm the most expendable among us and can afford to lose this body. It is appreciated, Kane, but it has to be me, Voight countermanded. If they realize you are a machine proxy, they may react badly. I will accompany you then, Kane adapted. You may require my assistance. Voight nodded. Kane's presence would be useful. I'll stay on the door in case you need help, Varma offered. Just make sure you open it if I start running. Varma flashed a weak smile at her, appreciating some levity in this dire situation. Humans, last chance. Steeling herself, Voight opened the door and stepped outside, Kane following her. Humans, the voice came again, this time sounding almost satisfied. There were so many of them surrounding the building that there was no way they could fight their way out. Her original estimate of thousands may have been conservative. The chittering and clicking they made was deafening, but it soon ceased. At the edge of the throng was a familiar soldier worker Naled, carrying a new xenoform of their species. On its back was another Naled, but this was slightly smaller and lacked limbs. It did seem to have more specialized mouthparts, though, less intimidating, but much more articulated. We are here, Voight called. Are you the leader of the Naled? I am a voice, nothing more. It responded with surprising eloquence. We have questions. I understand. What do you want to know? Why? It asked. Why are you here? Humans not to come here. We are investigating why this colony was abandoned. The voice took a little while to consider the response. Humans know why. Humans forced to leave. We didn't know. This is why we are here. Humans know. Humans deceive. It rankled. We did not. This place was unknown to us until recently, Voight protested. The humans who came here did not tell us. The voice paused again. Do not believe humans. The humans who did this were part of the Triskel Corporation. Triskel, the voice hissed, recognizing the word. Humans of Triskel. Humans of Teal. There was explicit rancor in the voice's words. It was clear that these were emotional beings. We are humans of the Republic. Voight tried to reassure that they were different, trying to hammer home that they were not of the same affiliation as the previous visitors. Republic, the voice repeated. Republic, Triskel, Teal, all humans kill Naled. Voight extrapolated that the Triskel Corporation had not been the only ones farming the Naled. The Teal Corporation must have been doing so as well. The Republic does not kill Naled, Voight proclaimed. The Republic did not know of the Naled until we came here and found records left by the Triskel Corporation. We are not the same. Do you understand? Yes, we understand, the voice continued. But we do not believe. Naled everywhere killed by humans of Triskel and humans of Teal.
Many Naled hives exterminated by humans. So few Naled left after extermination. But Naled strong. Naled survive. Few become many again.
How many Naled died?
More Naled than there are stars.
The voice answered with some lyricism. I'm sorry. What happened to you was an atrocity.
Humans not sorry.
We are not your enemy. We are not anything to do with Triskel or Teal, Voight pleaded. You speak our language. You must have learned it somehow, so you must know a little of our culture. You must know there are multiple human cultures.
Yes, humans of Triskel, humans of Teal, humans of Hela, humans of Jung, humans of Aleph.
It seemed that the Naled were familiar with the corporations at least. We are not like them. The Republic is different.
All humans the same,
the voice asserted.
Humans vermin, humans infestation.
The hate in the voice was undeniable. Voight could hardly blame them, given the apparent genocide, but their survival depended on disassociating themselves from the perpetrators of that genocide. No, we are not, Voight contradicted forcefully. The Republic does not want to hurt any Naled. We recognize you as an intelligent species and will treat you as equals.
Humans not equals to Naled. Naled are civilized. Humans are savages.
Voight was impressed with the Naled's grasp of their language, and it was a hard point to argue.
Naled communicate with humans. Humans answer by poisoning hives, killing Naled war forms and leaving Naled unable to defend, the voice explained. Then extermination begin. Not civilized. Savage.
The Republic does not do that. We do not want to exterminate Naled. We will leave planet and leave you in peace. Voight desperately hoped that the Naled would accept their offer to leave without incident, but it wasn't looking good.
Naled no human ship in orbit. Naled know it is a war form,
the voice revealed.
Human words worth nothing.
It is a war form, but it is not our intent to cause you harm. We did not know you were here.
Humans here to kill Naled,
the voice reiterated.
But Naled ready this time. Naled have learned from the past. Naled will kill humans.
Her pleas were falling on deaf ears. If the Naled had ears. If the Naled were trying to assess the human threat, they were viewing them through a tainted lens. There was a rumble in the distance, and Voight suddenly felt a little relieved, for the rumble heralded the arrival of the Revenants.
Sokolov to Voight, where do you want us?
Can you cover us while we try and make it back to the must? Don't engage unless they attack us, though. I want to try and resolve this without violence.
Acknowledged.
The Revenant came into view, decelerating to a holding position above the command center.
Human war forms, the voice muttered. Here to kill Naled.
You heard what I said, Voight contested. They are not going to fire unless you attack us. They are only here for defense, not offense.
Humans lie. Naled will make an example.
There was no peaceful end to this, Voight thought. Stay back. We just want to leave. Don't let this end in violence.
Violence all humans know, the voice uttered. But Naled know how to fight back.
She could see some of the Naled started to edge forward. She signaled to Kane and started turning. As she did this, the movement burst into a surge as the Naled rushed towards them. Varma opened the door for her, and Kane pushed her through, following right after. The second they were in cover, the Revenant opened up, pouring firepower onto the assembled Naled. Each projectile seemed to catch fire as soon as it was launched, as it ignited the oxygen around it, giving it a little additional lethality. They tried to screen the building out, but with so many Naled, this was only going to work for so long. What now? Messier yelled. Voight had to think fast. The Revenants were welcome support, but they needed to get out of the situation themselves. Voight to Sokolov, can you clear the airfield as best you can and keep them back? I'm going for the Firestorm.
Acknowledged.
Are you crazy, Commander? Mayhew bawled. There are thousands of them out there. Then you lot better cover me, Voight shot back. No, I'll do this, Varma offered. No, I know the Firestorm well, Voight determined. I carve a path, you get everyone onto the must. Very well, Varma answered. When this door opens, Mayhew, Mehmet, you cover the flanks. Heinzer, Sheen, you go with the commander. Keep them away from her. The rest of you, clear the way. Sheen cursed. Thunder rained down outside as two of the revenants poured fire down between the building and the must. They couldn't lay down fire too close to either the building or the transport, but they could thin the numbers out at least. Even so, they could hear the upper levels being shredded as some of the bullets got too close. Voight to Sokolov, we're coming out. Move the fire away from our path. Acknowledged. Through the window in the door, they could see the revenants move to either side, laying down a curtain either side. Ready? Open it. In the moment before the door was physically opened, Voight thought about her mother. Specifically, she remembered a time when her mother was teaching her how to use a rifle. Take your time, Ellen. Aim carefully and stay as composed as possible. Each bullet you fire has to have a purpose. Every bullet that misses fails in its purpose and hands an advantage to your enemy. Mum, I can do this. Better to fire one bullet and it to be on target than to discharge 100 and have them achieve nothing. Her mother was a fierce woman and a formidable soldier. Her fire was born of grim experience, and she wanted her daughter to be able to protect herself, so she had taken it upon herself to train her as soon as she was physically possible. As she recalled, she missed every shot that day, but her mother was a patient but determined tutor, and over time, she got better. Much better. Mehmet opened the door for Voight, allowing her to exit first. Voight could see the devastation wrought by the revenants, Naled corpses littering the ground between the command center and the airfield. There was still plenty of Naled that were still active, escaping the fire by virtue of being shielded by their brethren, but their numbers had at least been reduced significantly. Voight raised a railgun and fired a couple of shots at nearby Naled, taking her time to align the trajectory and fire with care, each magnetically driven projectile arriving at their intended destination with destructive consequences. She then dropped the heavy railgun. It would be no use to her whilst running, only serving to slow her down and make her more vulnerable. Heinzer and Sheen would have to defend her. Inevitably, she would pull ahead of them, but this was good as it meant her escort would have an easier time covering her whilst the others covered them. Go! She yelled, exploding into a sprint towards the must. She couldn't hear Heinzer and Sheen behind her, but she could see the Naled ahead of her fracture and burst as they fired. At this moment, her life rested in the hands of her escort. One Naled lurched towards her with an outstretched limb, and she leapt into the air to hurdle it, barely missing her. Another moved toward her and exploded as a projectile hit it, throwing her to one side, sending her skittering across the ground. She got up and started sprinting again, working on pure instinct and adrenaline. She could hear the Major bellowing behind her, but she couldn't make out the words over the cacophony of heavy weaponry and alien screeching. It didn't matter. Her objective was clear and in sight. The must was ahead. Two Naled were crawling over it, striking at it with their powerful limbs. One was taken out and collapsed to the ground in a flurry of purple goo. Seeing her approach, the pilot opened the side door of the craft, Singh appearing in the doorway with a gun at the ready. They couldn't risk opening the rear as it might afford the Naled access. Voight held herself through the doorway at full speed, crashing into the opposite hull and falling over. Singh fired a few shots behind her, affording Heinzer and Sheen some cover as they approached. As they drew closer, Voight scrambled to her feet and raced to the Firestorm, secured in its housing. She pounded the unlock release and it started to initiate, rotating around to face the rear exit. Opening the rear hatch, she clambered in and started the boot-up process. The hatch closed behind her, enveloping her with armor. The Firestorm was durable against incoming fire, but she doubted it could withstand the close-quarters onslaught the Naled could inflict if they swarmed her. Her best defense would be not to let them approach her. "Archer, open the rear!" she screamed. She could hear Heinzer and Sheen crash through the doorway behind her, as she breathed a sigh of relief that they had made it. The rear exit opened and she took a step through. The Firestorm started to unfold once it was outside the ship, quickly entering its assault configuration. With her arms inside the mech's arms, she tapped a few buttons on the hand controls, bringing the guns online. Some of the Naled had noticed the mech and were now approaching it. A few were taken out by Varma and his soldiers, but there was still plenty heading towards her. "Sorry, Mum, but this thing wasn't built for finesse," she whispered to herself. The barrels mounted on the forearm started to spin, and Voight depressed the trigger. The Firestorm was built for one thing, and one thing only: overwhelming firepower. Capable of firing thousands of projectiles every second, it unleashed a torrent of death at anything in its way. Designed for fire support, it was meant to be used sparingly, but given the numbers they faced, they could not afford such a luxury. The downside of this was that it was going to run out of ammunition very quickly, so she had to act fast. The Naled ahead of her were annihilated, reduced to chitin splinters in a second. Stomping forward, she turned the mech around the side of the must and aimed it towards the command center. She let off one burst of fire to one side of the entrance, spending a few seconds' worth of ammo shredding the Naled to that side, and then turned her attention to the far side, firing for a few seconds again. The shoulder-mounted missiles were activated and screamed off into the distance, detonating a safe distance away. "Holy hell!" Hannah exclaimed. Temporarily cleared, Varma ordered the retreat. "Run!" he roared, unsheathing his candor again. The soldiers bolted for the doorway and began racing towards the must, Varma and Kane bringing up the rear. More Naleds started to pour around the corner, swarming in huge numbers. Voight turned to face them, unleashing a full flurry of the Firestorm upon them. She could hear the discharge of weapons behind her as Heinzer and Sheen covered her undefended rear. She had to turn as she noticed more approaching from the flank, pouring leaden death in their direction. The air between her and the Naled catching fire as the oxygen ignited. Temperature alarms started sounding inside the canopy, and Voight knew the mech was seconds from overheating, perhaps even exploding. "Evac!" she yelled, punching the emergency release button. The rear hatch disengaged and crashed to the floor, dumping Voight unceremoniously out of the rear. Gathering her senses, she climbed to her feet and scrambled towards the rear ramp. "Get back on board," she ordered Heinzer and Sheen, who dutifully complied, ensuring she was on first. Varma and the others were nearly at the must, but the Naled were closing in fast. Archer already had the maglev engaged, and the ship was ready to ascend, only the control of the pilot restraining it. The soldiers crammed themselves through the side entrance, collapsing in a heap once inside the craft. Varma came crashing through, barely avoiding stabbing himself with his own candor. As Kane reached the ship, a Naled limb lashed out at him and cleanly, but it barely affected him. Being the last on board, the pilot pulled back sharply, and the must lurched upwards with force, throwing everyone inside to the floor. They could hear a brief scratching in the hull, but it dissipated quickly as the ship ascended beyond the Naled's reach. Once at a safe altitude, the pilot eased off in the ascent, and the passengers could pick themselves up. They all started to check each other for wounds, but as luck would have it, no further injuries had been received. Not that anyone rejoiced or congratulated each other. They all just slumped into their seats and paused for breath, silently grateful for having survived. Only a few words were spoken, and they came from Mayhew. "Thank for that,"